What's up, culture crew? I'm Ash.
And I'm T. And if you're looking for curated conversations that connect you to the culture,
Keep listening.
hey, y'all.
Let's go
Welcome
with it.
back. Yes, if you're joining us again, welcome back. If you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. Welcome to the
Shout out to you.
party. So before we jump into today's episode, we do have a very special segment that we're just going to start all of our episodes with because we do it naturally anyway. Ashley, tell them what we're about to have.
We're about to have tea time,
Tea
y'all, because
time.
we know when two black girls get together, some tea is going to be spilled.
Period. Every
So let's
time.
get into it.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about therapy in the Black community.
Who
hmm
a heavy hitter.
Yeah, as always.
Already, those words can just kind of
Come
ship
out
you
the
out.
gate swinging. Okay. Yeah. So, Ash, do you want to start us off?
Well, okay. Shout out to all the therapists out there. Shout out to all the black therapists because you guys are working against something every single day, working against
Absolutely.
generational curses every single day. Shout out to my therapist. I doubt she's watching this, but if you are, you're my girl. Therapies helps get us through, right? When we think about some of our generational traumas, at least for me, I am trying to make sure that my kids don't have to deal with the same things that I did. And the only way to
Right.
do that is to really work through it. And I know me and Tiana often have conversations about how well our therapy is going and how much we appreciate
Mhm.
that experience. Also, shout out to therapyforblackgirls.com
Yes.
because y'all blessed the both of us. What do you think, T?
I think that honestly, yeah, like she said, I found my therapist at therapyforblackgirls.com as well. And I love her real bad. So she is a Black woman as well. I think there's just something so unique
Mm,
about being a Black woman and those shared experiences that people just really don't understand. And I think therapy is one of those places where you can't feel misunderstood
mm,
or the work can't get done.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like I've had
yeah.
other therapists and a big trend was that I kind of just always felt misheard. It was that same like, oh, the same way I need to put on a voice or a character for life outside, I felt the same way in session and it just wasn't giving what I needed it to. You know what I mean?
How did your family react the first time? The first time you were like, "Hey."
Well, mama wasn't exactly like go to press them dishes, like as they say, but it was definitely like, well, what's wrong? Like as if it
Mm,
was a single event or okay, what's upsetting you right now? And if we fix that problem, then you won't need the therapy anymore. And I think that one of the biggest things about it being the stigma in the Black community is the diagnosis, right? Because I feel like once you get a diagnosis, that means there's something wrong with you,
it
right?
doesn't have to be anything wrong for you to go to
Absolutely.
therapy.
Absolutely not, okay? And I think that, me telling my mom, like, I'm depressed was hard for her to
Mm,
hear, even
mhm.
as somebody who, had sacrificed so much to give us everything. Because to her, she's like, "Girl, like, literally, you got the clothes on your back, the food on your plate, the roof over your head, like, what do you have to be upset about?" And this is, like, when I'm away at college,
Right,
like,
right.
having a good time. And she's just like, I don't understand what it is that you're depressed about. But what I've kind of discovered on my journey is that
Mhm.
those diagnoses are they're mental health disorders, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not depressed because I'm sad right now. Like if you have depression, it's a chemical imbalance and
Mhm.
you don't have as much serotonin, as much dopamine as you need. Like it's literally a mental health disorder. And I think once
Mhm.
I was able to come to grips with that, it was a lot easier
Mhm.
for me to stand in my truth and explain it to my family because I
Yeah.
felt more confident in it. Like it wasn't
Right.
me tiptoeing around and then being able to shoot it down. It was like, no, this is what's going on with me. Thank you
Mhm.
for your support. you
I
know?
think we need to acknowledge, especially within our community, like it's okay to not be okay, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be figured out internally. Like you don't have to figure everything out within your own head and let no one know. It's okay to not be okay, and it's okay, to seek help. So if you are someone that is watching this and is considering going to therapy, do it. I
Go.
10 out of 10 recommend get it on the schedule. Like get on just
Mhm.
same way you go get your nails done or do whatever, put your therapy as a part of your self-care routine, because taking care of your mental is just as important as taking care of your exterior. So
Absolutely.
let
Absolutely.
us let us know what you want us to talk about in tea time. We're down to talk about whatever. You want to get controversial with it? We here
We
with
can
it.
do that. We can do that.
So yeah, we hope y'all love that, and let us know in the comments what you're interested in talking about next.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's episode. So, today's episode title is CRP, CRT, and everything in between. So, we are going to be
Yikes.
covering a wide range today. Ashley, I think that one of the things that was the most frustrating here
Mm,
recently
mm-hmm.
was the way people are throwing these terms around
Ciao.
incorrectly and
Let's get
creating controversy where there is none,
right.
basically. So I guess we can start off with a formal definition
Yeah,
and
sure.
then
Let's
we'll
do it.
go from there. Okay. All right. So sorry, guys, if this sounds teachery, because I definitely was about to get into teacher mode as I read it.
We
But
love that though.
right. But Geneva Gay defined culturally responsive teaching, which is what CRT stands for, as using the cultural knowledge, prior
Mm,
experiences, frames of reference, and performance styles of ethnically diverse students to make learning encounters more relevant to and effective for them. And then
effective for keywords here.
right. And then she goes on to explain the 6 key practices of culturally responsive teaching. So when we say CRT, we're talking about culturally responsive teaching, not critical race theory.
Just in case y'all were
Just
wondering.
yes. So,
Let's be for real.
Ashley, yeah. So, did you want to talk about anything? Which one of these stands out the most to you? We'll start there.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. The one that stands out the most is having high expectations for all students.
Mm,
Now, I'm just going to speak to this not from the teacher perspective, but from the student perspective.
mm,
Kind of growing up, I was the only Black girl, right? From kindergarten to high school graduation, really. So it was very
wow.
often that I was the only in all of my classes. So what did that mean? That means that my teachers had lower expectations for me. They didn't
Mm,
expect me to perform at the same level as my white counterparts.
mm,
And statistics show us that students are going to perform at the expectation level that we set for them. And oftentimes we're setting lower expectations for our Black and Brown students. And then we're wondering, well, why are they not performing at the same rate as their white counterparts or classmates? And
absolutely.
so when we think about those expectations, I feel like as educators, as people, honestly, we need to think about, are we being equal with our
Mhm.
level of expectation? Because all students are capable of achieving, but do you believe that? Because
Right.
how are they going to believe that in themselves if you don't even believe it?
Absolutely. And like, I think that's so important. And it's
Mm,
something that gets overlooked because a lot of teachers, in my opinion, don't recognize the impact that they really have. There
right.
was a literal research study done that showed that they told a teacher randomly, hey,
Mm,
kid 1, 2, 3, 4, they're really smart and we expect them to perform well. The
mm,
teacher showed more preferential treatment to them. Even when the student wasn't performing well, they gave them that extra encouragement because they believed
mm-hmm,
that they were a high achiever. And
mm-hmm,
those students rose to those expectations. And that's what's going to happen. Students are either going to rise to your expectations or fall to them. I believe that wholeheartedly.
100%. And this definitely affects Black boys in particular.
Yeah.
I have brothers, you know, Tiana, I'm sure you male friends. When I think about them and how they view school, their views of school are not great. They're like, I hated school.
Hate it.
Well, I was telling something to Tiana, my younger brother, hopefully he doesn't get embarrassed when I'm saying this. Shout out to him, really smart kid. He hated school, but the reason he hated school was because school hated him, right? The teachers don't believe in you. They don't set high expectations for you. And so why do you have the motivation to show up and do your best, right? And I don't think, like you were saying, that we realize that that impact that you can have in elementary school, that is going to come into that adult's mind. When they turn 20, they are still going to think they hate school.
Absolutely.
And then when they say they hate school, they think they hate learning. But that's really not the case. That is because a teacher or someone didn't believe in them and everything that they had to offer. So
every
that
time
one
you
hits me
say it,
heavy.
every time you say it, it hits. They hated school because school hated them. Like it doesn't get realer than that.
Let that sink in.
Because and I taught 4th grade. I already have little boys who hate school. You hate school? You've only been doing school for like 4 years.
A short amount of time.
How can you hate it? And it's because they've already been written off. I taught 4th grade. I had people, 1st grade teachers coming to me like, oh, you got such and such. Be careful. He's this, he's this, he's this.
Yeah.
I would get that student and I'm looking like, I have 0 of these issues.
I don't know what you're talking about because this is not the same student that you said you saw.
Absolutely. And it just really lets you know that a student's experience in school is so dependent upon the teacher. You do have that power. And I think teachers sometimes even don't realize how much it stays with them.
Yes,
right?
That's the key.
Like, especially the older that, like, honestly, all of them, because K-12, you can internalize that stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I was saying that I was not good at science because I was told I was not good at science in 7th grade. I specifically remember, I'm not going to blast Mr. B, as I'll call him, but he literally, I was struggling. And, I was, of course, in the gifted and talented program and everything, but I was struggling in science. And he said, I just don't think science is your thing. And in that one sentence affected how I viewed science for the rest of my K-12 career. Literally, oh, I'm not good at science. My mom made me take AP environmental science. The only bad thing I ever did in school, I skipped that class because I was like, no, I'm not a science person. I could never major in biology. I could never, who knows what I would have been doing? Maybe I was supposed to be a microbiologist, but
girl, you might have been.
Yeah,
you might have been.
But Mr. B told me I wasn't good at science, so here we are.
And I had a very similar experience. It was 9th grade. I was doing geometry. And if you know me and you're watching this podcast, I love math. Math is my subject. Reading, I didn't like teaching. We'll get into that another day. But I was in math class. Now, geometry was the hardest math for me personally. Algebra, I could do it all day long. But geometry, something about them shapes and the flipping and listen, it wasn't working for me. And I was struggling, right? And I was going to my teacher, Mr. I'm not going to say his name. And I told him, like, I'm having a hard time. Like, I need help. He asked me what I wanted to do when I was older. And I said, I want to be a math teacher. So I want to get this, right? And he said to me, maybe you should consider a different profession.
He did not say that to you.
He did say that. He did. Oh, and you bet your bottom dollar. I went home and my 2 Black parents, both of my parents are lawyers, marched their tails right up to that school.
I bet they did.
And had a conversation with him because how dare you?
That's horrible.
How dare you at such a malleable age
tell
me that I need to reconsider my dream? You need to reconsider what you're doing for work.
Exactly. That is horrible. But imagine, and it makes me think, but imagine if you didn't have those parents.
Right. And some of our students don't.
A lot of our students don't. They don't have parents who have the time, the resources, even the know-how, quite honestly, because what I found teaching at these low socioeconomic schools is that
Mhm.
parents are intimidated by that academic setting. They don't want to
Yeah.
come in here
Yeah.
because they don't feel like they know what they're talking about.
And they've
And
had their own school trauma.
hello.
Hello.
And who wants that? Who wants to
Right.
come into a space where you already feel like the person you're talking to thinks they're superior to you,
Mhm.
even when it has to do with your child and their
Mm.
education? Like,
Right.
and it scares me because I'm like, there's so many students who don't have those advocates. And what's happening to them?
They're getting left behind. They're getting pushed along, left
Mm,
behind, and then they're confused about what they want to be or do by the time they get to the 12th grade.
absolutely.
And they hate
It's
school.
sad. And they hate school by that time. Like, I couldn't believe it. The number of kids who would say they hate school by 9,
By 9 years old.
you
So
hate
who has been in
school.
your life that has made you hate it that much? Because at 9, you're so malleable. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like you have the opportunity to be really excited about learning,
Absolutely. So
but you're not.
impressionable. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's sad. It really hurts my heart when we think about it. Like, and I think, and this kind of goes into what we were saying about teacher impact. I
Yeah.
think one of the most mm, critical things that I noticed was that
Mhm.
we see our students different.
True.
Students who look like you, students who have the same background as you, that affinity bias.
Yeah.
We know you. You are like us, so I treat
Can
you
relate.
differently.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things I noticed was that I called my students pet names. Baby, sweetheart, love, come here, love. Do this for me. Oh, baby, no, we're not gonna do that today. Da 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 da. But it was almost like because I could imagine them being my kids,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're basically my son and daughter when you're in
Mhm.
this classroom, you know what I mean? But what I noticed is that my white counterpart, who my team teacher, she didn't. It was more friend, it was more buddy, there was just some distance between
Kiddo. They like to say kiddo
kiddo,
too.
right?
Kiddo.
Like, but you could tell there's some distance there.
Mhm.
It's not as personable, and kids can tell. They would
Mhm.
always say, like, "Miss such and such doesn't like me," and I'm like,
Mhm.
"No, like, that's not true," but they can feel that you don't care about them as individuals.
Yes. And that's what's so important with
Mhm.
CRP and CRT is that like we have to understand the student as a person
Right.
outside of them just being a body in your classroom, right? And so
Absolutely.
when we think about our community, like in general, we connect through families and relationships. So if those
Yeah.
students are coming to your class and not feeling that relationship, well, now they don't want to learn from you.
Right. What is it that they say? They don't care what you know till they know that you care.
Hello, message.
Like, they literally don't care what
No,
you
it doesn't
know.
matter to
Like,
them.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
You could be the best teacher in the world, know everything about the topic, but if
yeah,
those kids are not engaged and feel like you have a real connection with them, they are
it's a
not there
wrap.
to learn from you.
Mm-mm.
You said what you were talking about holistically, seeking to educate, the whole child, bridging those gaps between home and school
Right.
practices.
Yep.
They should feel that, and I used to tell
Mhm.
teachers all the time, I'm like, "We spend more time with some of these kids than anybody else."
Right.
Like, you
Most
are
people,
the
we spend more
adult
time than most people.
like, you are the adult influence in their life.
Yeah.
They're going to remember the things you say to them and the things you didn't say,
Right.
you know what I mean? Um, I think that when we're talking about the definition, so we talked about CRT and then even CRP, culturally responsive or culturally relevant pedagogy. I
Mhm.
think that's the main thing to point out is that pedagogy is the study, right? It's the theory
Mhm.
behind these things. And then
Mhm.
the teaching is the actual strategy of it, like
Mhm.
when you implement those things. So, Ash, I want to ask you, like, what's something you feel like you did in the classroom that was culturally relevant or culturally responsive? What's
Oh.
something you did that you were like, "Yeah, I ate that." Like, my kids, they into it, cause yeah.
Well,
What do you
I
think?
think 2 things come to my mind. One of them is making learning accessible. to
Mhm.
them. The kids love music and they love TikTok. So you gotta
Yeah.
connect it to the music and the trends. So at the end of each topic, we're writing a rap as a class. We're
Yes.
performing it whole group. And I always added movements to my rap because we want to speak to every different type of learner. So when we're
Mhm.
talking about long division, we're going divide, right? So that
Yes.
they have some association with their body and their mind. Um, Everything is connected to the learning. I also did this thing called Chalk Talk. I had like a little courtyard in the back of my classroom where there was concrete. So
Mhm.
when we were doing adding and subtracting a multi-digit whole numbers, we take the chalk, we go outside, and we solve on the chalk, right? They feel like they're smack in the middle of the learning.
I
So I
love
think
that.
taking that learning from passive to active and making that learning accessible and fun, that's what it really means to be a culturally responsive teacher. So that's what I did.
Absolutely.
What did you do?
I love that. First of all, chalk talk, too cute. Love that for
It was
sure.
fun. It was fun.
Um, I think one of the things that I always tried to do was make sure that all of our holidays were celebrated.
Mm,
Like, and another thing, like, your Black children are not a monolith. Right?
mm-hmm.
Like, you relating to one of your kids about something doesn't necessarily mean that all of your students are gonna be into that same thing or relate on
Right.
that same level. But I think, like, making sure that we celebrated all of the holidays inside of, the winter season, because it's not just Christmas.
It's not.
Between Diwali and Kwanzaa and Hanukkah, and there's so much that goes on. And I think also being open to learning, because I
Yeah.
didn't know about
Mm-hmm.
these things. I didn't come into the classroom a winter season holiday expert or anything, but you ask your students, what are you guys
Yes.
doing at home? How are you celebrating? How can we do that in the classroom? Do you want to bring something in and share your culture with your peers so that,
Mm-hmm.
and even I felt like that kind of eliminated the whole bullying aspect of it as
Yeah.
well,
Talk
because
about it.
now we're all a part of this together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just student A who's celebrating Kwanzaa.
Mm-hmm.
We're all celebrating, like, we're a part of it now.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Being open to learning as a
Mhm.
teacher. Like the students don't have to be the only ones soaking things up, right? Like you can soak up stuff from them, their cultures, their family dynamic. And that's how you can be relatable
Yeah,
and
and
make
you're
those
gonna get it
relationships.
wrong also.
Yeah,
That's the
that's
thing.
also true.
You're
Yeah.
gonna get it wrong.
Yeah.
You're gonna pronounce some things wrong. You're gonna say something that might even sound ignorant to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But when you build a rapport with your students where they know that they can correct you,
Mm-hmm.
number one,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and then feel comfortable and confident enough to say, "Hey, this is how you pronounce this word," or "This is what I prefer to be called." Like,
Yep.
it's really priceless.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. I think we've talked a lot about, like, the benefits of
Mm.
CRT and CRP, but just I wanna get into some of the consequences
Of
if
not having it.
you don't. So,
Whoa.
like, if you hear the episode and you're like, "You know what? Nah, I'd rather not. Opting out,
Too
not
much of a mental lift.
not for me?" So, like, what are some of the things that can happen? And, of course, the very first thing that comes to mind for me is the
Mm-hmm.
school to prison pipeline.
Get into it.
Those words, like, I think the first
Heavy.
time that I heard it, I was just like, "That can't be true." Like, I was in my teacher preparation program, and I was just like,
It's
there's
sick.
no way that that's a
Mm-hmm.
real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it absolutely is. It is a very real thing. There's so much research that can be done about the school to prison pipeline, but
Hello.
essentially, state governments and local governments using test scores and things to
Mm.
determine what the prison population will be in the future. So, in layman's terms, taking those third grade test scores and
Yeah.
seeing that they're not proficient in reading and saying, okay, that means in 15 to 20 years, this is how many prisoners we're going to have because of the correlation between
It shouldn't even be a
illiteracy
relation.
and committing crimes.
Like, why is that even a correlation? Like, why should those go together? So if you are watching this and you're like, yeah, like, I don't know, CRT sounds good, but I don't have time. Do you have time to save a kid from being a
Mhm.
statistic?
Literally.
That's what you need to ask yourself.
Quite literally. And it just gets worse. The older they get and the farther behind you get, the more likely it is that our students end up making not great choices, right? I mean, when you get put into those positions where you feel like
Yeah.
you don't have a choice, where you aren't
Mhm.
keeping up, yeah, that's what ends up happening. And I wanted to put this statistic up as well. And this is
Mhm.
something that came from the same learning center that was talking about the school to prison pipeline. And we'll link these resources in the show notes and everything afterwards. But it says that Black children constitute 18% of students, but they account for 46% of those suspended more than once.
Hello? Let that sink in.
And about 1 in 4 Black children with disabilities were suspended at least once versus 1 in 11 white students with disabilities.
Mm.
Yeah,
So check your bias
absolutely.
is the
And
first thing.
one of our professional development workshops does go deep into bias, your unconscious bias, how it affects students, the impact
Mhm.
it has, and also how to mitigate the negative effects of your
Right.
unconscious bias.
Right.
Just knowing that students are removed from the learning environment so much more often.
Why are we taking students out of the learning environment as a consequence? Let's start with that.
What sense does that make?
Now, I'm not saying there's not extreme cases,
Absolutely. Let's be real. We were
but
teachers,
like
so we know.
I've had several. Okay, let's have a moment. But like when we really think about like why are we using removal from an academic environment as a consequence? So like if that kid doesn't want to be there anyway, they're like, okay, well, I'm gonna do some crazy stuff just so I can get up out of here. Hell, what?
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not like, are we understanding the future implications that that action is going to have for that student?
And then they're just missing class time. So not
And
only are
they're
they
going to be further
gone,
behind.
they're going to be farther behind when they do come back. They're not going to know what's going on, so they're going to act out again.
And we already talked about how we know that the issue of lower expectation for students of color. So now they're getting kicked out of class. They're going to be behind. You already thought when they were in class they couldn't do what their counterparts could do. Now they've been gone, and you still are like, well, this is exactly why they shouldn't be in class. Excuse me, what?
Yeah. And our
But
students
y'all not
will
ready
be
for that
suffering.
though. Yeah,
You know,
y'all not ready for
that's
that.
a deep one. We might have to do a whole another episode about the pipeline because it gets deep. It really
Mm-hmm.
does. I don't know, Ash. This is heavy for me. It's one of
It
those
is.
ones that really just sits on me
Mm-hmm.
heavy because I've seen
Mm-hmm.
it. You see it happen every day with my cousins and think people who my mom didn't even send me to the middle school that my cousins had gone to because
Wow.
she was afraid that they would already have a perspective of me based on, the family name and everything.
Like what?
Sent me to a whole different school. The way that they treat our boys, our girls, all of our students, and they're the ones who suffer at the end of the day.
At the end of the
And that's the thing that makes me the saddest because the babies, like that's
the
that
babies.
it's
Like
it's
we gonna have to get into in another episode how black boys lose their innocence by first grade.
mm, mm,
I'm gonna let y'all that sit
mm.
on y'all spirit because we're
The
gonna get into the
adultification.
of a child. A child. That's why this conversation is so important. We want to combine the realness of it all with the data though, because like, yes, these are our experiences, but this is also true. These are
It's
facts.
facts. Literally, it's facts. Well, I hope that as you guys were listening today, you were able to get a great understanding of CRP, CRT, and those things that happen, that are implications within both of
Mm-hmm.
those fields. Ash, do we have anything else, or are we wrapping up for today?
I think we left the people with enough.
Yeah, think about it. Like I said, we're going to definitely link some
Mm-hmm.
of the resources in the show notes, because at the end of the day, this is an educational podcast. We're here to entertain you, but we're also here to educate you because we're educators. That's what we do.
I
Um,
can't help it.
where are we on all the socials, Ashley?
Yeah, find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever social media platform you have at Get Cultured Edu. Follow us and stay tuned for some exciting things that we have coming. And we see y'all again soon.
Yes, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Until next time.
Peace out.